It began with a single image, one photograph that seemed, at first glance, almost ordinary. Yet the impact it would have on Meghan Markle's carefully cultivated public image was anything but ordinary. A smiling woman, engaged in what appeared to be casual conversation with photographers, became the epicenter of a storm that threatened to upend decades of public perception, royal decorum, and the narrative of victimhood that Meghan had so meticulously shaped. To understand why this image matters, why it has ignited debate across social media, news outlets, and even within royal circles, we have to step back and examine the story it threatens to rewrite, a story of image, strategy, and perception in the modern royal era. The image itself is deceptively simple. Meghan, dressed impeccably, with the poise expected of a duchess, is captured in a candid moment, smiling broadly and leaning slightly toward the group of paparazzi in front of her. It is a gesture that, in the world of celebrity and media, could mean nothing. Yet context is everything. According to the photographer who captured the moment, Meghan was not simply caught in an unscripted interaction. She was actively negotiating, discussing, and even orchestrating the exchange that would later be presented to the public as an unprovoked harassment scenario. In other words, the photo reveals something deeply unsettling for those who have followed her public narrative. The moments she condemned as invasion and harassment may, in fact, have been staged opportunities she herself had a hand in creating. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Imagine for a moment the tension of walking down the street, knowing cameras are present, but also knowing that your every movement is scrutinized. For Meghan, this is not imagination, it is reality. The balance between privacy and publicity is a tightrope that she has navigated since her engagement to Prince Harry was announced. Every step, every gesture, every smile is examined under a magnifying glass. In the world of royalty, image is not merely a matter of pride, it is currency. And in Meghan's case, the stakes are higher because her currency is not only royal tradition, but also the narrative of modern feminism, of independence, and of a woman navigating centuries-old structures with grace, defiance, and, sometimes, controversy. The photograph in question challenges that carefully curated narrative. It forces a question that her public statements have so far sidestepped. How much of the story of harassment is genuine, and how much is performance? The idea that Meghan could negotiate a staged encounter with paparazzi, only to later condemn it publicly, creates a tension that is difficult to reconcile. To the casual observer, it might appear as a betrayal of trust. To the dedicated royal watcher, it is a revelation that alters the framework through which all previous statements and actions are interpreted. But to understand the full significance, we must also understand the environment in which this photograph was taken. Meghan Markle's life is one of intense scrutiny, where every public appearance is carefully choreographed and every interaction with the media is meticulously managed. Since the announcement of her engagement, Meghan has faced a unique duality. On one hand, she is a global celebrity, adored and criticized in equal measure. On the other, she is a member of the royal family, subject to protocols, expectations, and pressures that few outside that sphere can comprehend. The photograph captures her at the intersection of these two worlds, smiling, negotiating, and navigating the very media she has publicly criticized. It is a moment that, for better or worse, humanizes her, while simultaneously inviting intense scrutiny. The story becomes more complex when we consider the photographer who captured the moment. Royal photographers operate in a space of near-constant tension. They are tasked with documenting the lives of the royals, often from a distance, while also respecting privacy and protocol. Yet in this instance, the photographer claims that Meghan was aware of their presence and, crucially, interacted with them in a way that suggested control rather than vulnerability. The revelation of this image does not merely challenge Meghan's public narrative. It challenges the broader understanding of media manipulation, staged photo ops, and the delicate dance between celebrities and the press. It raises a provocative question. In a world dominated by perception, is authenticity even possible, or is every interaction a form of strategy? This introduction of strategy into Meghan's story is significant because it reframes the narrative of victimhood that has been central to her public identity. The notion that Meghan could have orchestrated interactions with the paparazzi, yet presented herself as a victim of harassment, complicates the emotional calculus for the public. Fans and critics alike are forced to confront the idea that the boundary between performance and reality may be thinner than previously assumed. It invites debate, not only about Meghan herself, but about the broader media ecosystem, the role of the royal family in shaping public perception, and the ways in which personal narrative can be both weapon and shield. Even beyond the immediate shock of the image, the context surrounding it intensifies the intrigue. Meghan's interactions with the paparazzi have long been a point of contention. Stories of harassment, privacy invasions, and media overreach have dominated headlines, casting her as a modern figure struggling against an age-old institution and relentless public attention. Yet the photograph suggests a more nuanced reality. Moments of confrontation, anxiety, or distress may, at times, have been carefully curated opportunities designed to reinforce a specific narrative. This duality, where vulnerability and strategy intersect, creates an emotional tension that is at the heart of the unfolding scandal. The implications extend beyond Meghan herself. For Prince Harry, this revelation is particularly charged. Throughout their public life, Harry has been positioned as a protective partner, often framing his wife as subject to unfair treatment and media scrutiny. The possibility that interactions were staged introduces a strain into that narrative, challenging the perception of victimhood and authenticity that Harry has publicly defended. Moreover, it forces the public to reevaluate previous incidents, interviews, and public statements, raising questions about intention, image control, and the sometimes blurred line between private moments and public performance. The introduction of this photograph into public consciousness also carries a broader cultural weight. Meghan Markle has long been a symbol of modernity within the royal family. A woman of color, a former actress, a media-savvy figure capable of navigating complex narratives. Her image has been carefully crafted to reflect independence, awareness, and engagement with issues larger than herself. Yet a single image, capturing a smile and a negotiation with photographers, threatens to complicate this narrative. It demonstrates that the construction of public identity is never entirely within one's control. That perception is a delicate architecture built on moments, gestures, and the interpretations of others. At the heart of this story lies a deeper tension, one that resonates far beyond royal circles. It is the tension between what is seen and what is hidden, between performance and reality, between intention and perception. The photograph is a microcosm of these dynamics, crystallizing years of public scrutiny, personal narrative, and media manipulation into a single, explosive moment. It compels viewers to ask difficult questions. How much of what we see is genuine? How much is staged, curated, or controlled? And, perhaps most importantly, what does this reveal about the nature of celebrity, power, and influence in the modern age? In setting the stage for the narrative to come, it is essential to recognize the gravity of this revelation. This is not a story about a single photograph or a fleeting scandal. It is about the intersection of media, power, and perception, a convergence that has shaped the lives of royals for generations, but is amplified in the age of social media and relentless public scrutiny. As we explore the context, the fallout, and the reactions to this photograph, the story will unfold in layers. Moments of tension, analysis of motives, and the emotional weight carried by those involved. The introduction of this photograph also invites us to consider Meghan's agency. Smiling, negotiating, engaging with photographers, these are not passive gestures. They are acts of control, signaling awareness, strategy, and intention. This challenges the simplistic dichotomy of victim and aggressor, revealing a more complex portrait of a woman navigating unprecedented pressures. The photograph is not just an image. It is a narrative pivot, a lens through which her public persona can be re-evaluated, dissected, and debated. As the public digests this revelation, the emotional stakes are clear. Fans and critics alike are confronted with evidence that may contradict the story they believed. Media outlets must reconcile previous narratives with this new information, and the royal family faces yet another moment of delicate management. For Meghan herself, the photograph represents both vulnerability and empowerment. exposing her to criticism while simultaneously demonstrating her capability to engage with the media on her terms. The tension is palpable, the stakes high, and the story far from resolved. By the end of this introduction, viewers are primed for the deeper investigation ahead. The photograph is not merely a curiosity. It is a key to understanding broader themes of perception, power, and personal narrative. It is the first thread in a complex web of interactions that will reveal motives, strategies, and consequences previously hidden from public view. As we move forward, each chapter will unravel another layer of this story, examining the context, the reactions, and the emotional undercurrents that surround this singular moment. The day the photograph emerged, social media erupted almost instantly. For decades, royal watchers had debated, speculated, and analyzed every movement of Meghan Markle. Yet in that single image, there was something that no rumor, interview, or leaked document had previously captured. Undeniable evidence that challenged the very foundation of the story Meghan had cultivated. The photograph depicted her not as a passive victim, overwhelmed by relentless media scrutiny, but as an active participant, smiling, negotiating, and interacting with the very photographers she had publicly decried. To understand the full weight of this moment, it's necessary to step into the world of royal media management. For members of the royal family, especially those as high-profile as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, every interaction with the press is a carefully orchestrated dance. Each smile, each gesture, each glance can be interpreted, misinterpreted, or magnified by global media. The balance between authenticity and image control is delicate. Royals are trained from a young age in poise and protocol, learning which interactions are permissible and which could spark controversy. For Meghan, however, the stakes were uniquely amplified. She was navigating not only the centuries-old traditions of royalty, but also her own pre-established celebrity persona, a public image constructed from years in the entertainment industry, media appearances, and Hollywood media savvy. The photograph disrupted this careful balance. It was taken in a moment that, on the surface, appeared innocuous. Meghan smiling at the paparazzi, engaging with them in what seemed like a friendly exchange. But the insider accounts revealed something far more calculated. According to the photographer who captured the image, Meghan was not caught off guard. She was aware of the cameras, aware of the opportunity, and aware that the interaction would be seen, scrutinized, and possibly judged. The gestures she made, subtle nods, brief conversations, and her strategic positioning, suggested an awareness and control that complicated the narrative of unprovoked harassment that she had previously presented to the world. For royal commentators, journalists, and the public alike, the implications were staggering. Here was a duchess, widely celebrated as a symbol of modern empowerment and a target of media intrusion, appearing to orchestrate the very encounters she later condemned. The emotional reaction was swift. Critics labeled it deceitful. Supporters hesitated, torn between their admiration for her resilience and the undeniable evidence before them. And the royal family, always conscious of public perception, had to consider how this revelation might influence broader opinions, from loyalty within palace circles to global public trust. The photograph also cast a new light on prior incidents. Many of Meghan's reported encounters with paparazzi, those moments of perceived distress, rushed escapes, or public confrontations, were now being reevaluated. Were they genuine moments of fear and intrusion, or were some of them strategically crafted for maximum public sympathy? The idea that the Duchess could both orchestrate and condemn interactions with the press introduced a moral ambiguity that had previously been absent from public discussions. It wasn't merely a question of image control, it was a question of authenticity, intention, and the nature of celebrity in an age of constant surveillance. Media experts quickly weighed in, analyzing the photograph frame by frame. Body language specialists noted the subtle cues, the relaxed posture, the open expression, the way Meghan leaned slightly forward, engaging the photographers rather than recoiling. Public relations analysts highlighted the timing. The photo was taken moments before an event that was later portrayed in the media as a spontaneous instance of harassment. Even social media influencers dissected the image, sharing slow-motion sequences and comparisons with other public appearances. Every detail suggested preparation, awareness, and possibly a degree of manipulation, a calculated move to control narrative outcomes before they even occurred. The impact was magnified by the context of Meghan's previous interviews. Over the years, she had spoken candidly about feeling overwhelmed by paparazzi, detailing moments of stress and emotional strain caused by relentless media attention. These accounts, shared in interviews, documentaries, and public appearances, had built a narrative of victimhood that resonated globally. Audiences empathized with her struggles, and her story became a lens through which the pressures of modern celebrity and royal life were examined. Yet the photograph suggested a complicating factor. If some encounters were orchestrated, it called into question the totality of the narrative she had presented. Could vulnerability coexist with strategic orchestration? And if so, to what extent? The story of the photograph also shed light on the culture of the paparazzi industry itself. Paparazzi operate in a complex ecosystem of legality, ethics, and opportunity. Photographers are constantly seeking candid moments that will capture public interest, often navigating gray areas of privacy and pursuit. For high-profile individuals like Meghan, every public movement presents potential opportunities for image capture. The photograph revealed a unique dynamic. It suggested not only the presence of paparazzi, but also the potential for collaboration, intentional or otherwise. Meghan's interaction indicated that she may have been leveraging these encounters for media advantage, a subtle negotiation that blurred the lines between intrusion and arrangement. Emotionally, the photograph was powerful because it humanized Meghan in a way few images had before. A smile, a brief engagement, a visible sense of awareness. These are gestures that convey confidence, agency, and strategy. But they also introduce moral complexity. For the public, the emotional impact is twofold: admiration for her composure and questioning of her narrative. It prompts reflection. Can one be both a victim and an orchestrator? Is it possible to feel genuine harassment while also strategically engaging with those perpetuating it? These questions are uncomfortable because they challenge the binary narratives of innocence and deceit that audiences often prefer. The reactions from the royal family were reportedly measured but urgent. Palace aides and communication strategists quickly convened to assess potential fallout. Every new revelation about Meghan's public interactions is weighed not only for its immediate impact, but also for its long-term effect on institutional reputation. Royals operate in a world where perception shapes legacy, and even a single photograph can alter centuries of carefully cultivated tradition. The challenge was clear: how to address a situation where the Duchess's actions could be interpreted as both strategic and manipulative, without escalating public controversy or undermining the family's credibility. For historians and royal commentators, the photograph became a case study in the evolution of monarchy in the media age. Previous generations of royals faced press scrutiny, but the scale and immediacy of social media have amplified the stakes exponentially. Every interaction, no matter how brief, can be captured, analyzed, and shared globally within minutes. Meghan's awareness of this environment is evident in the photograph. She is not merely reacting to the presence of cameras. She is engaging with them, navigating their attention in a way that suggests a sophisticated understanding of narrative construction and public perception. Beyond the media implications, the photograph raises questions about trust and authenticity. For Meghan's supporters, it challenges the simplicity of her narrative without negating her experiences entirely. For critics, it provides tangible evidence that her public statements may have been selectively curated or strategically presented. And for the general public, it introduces a compelling tension: the desire to believe in authenticity versus the recognition that in a media-saturated world, perception is often as carefully managed as reality. The photograph's emergence also sparked debates within celebrity culture and feminist discourse. Meghan has often been positioned as a modern woman challenging traditional expectations, navigating sexism, and asserting agency in male-dominated spaces. If some interactions were orchestrated, does that diminish her agency or highlight it? Could strategic engagement with the media be a form of empowerment, allowing her to control narratives in a landscape where control is often stripped from women? These discussions illustrate that the photograph is not merely a scandal, but also a lens through which broader societal themes are examined: power, gender, and the construction of identity in the public sphere. Finally, the photograph's emotional resonance is compounded by timing. In the midst of ongoing public scrutiny, legal battles, and intense media coverage of royal dynamics, this single image became a lightning rod for discussion, speculation, and analysis. It serves as a reminder that in the age of instant information, every gesture carries weight, every smile is scrutinized, and every photograph can alter the trajectory of public perception. For Meghan Markle, the photograph is more than an image. It is a narrative pivot, a moment that challenges assumptions, reshapes understanding, and sets the stage for a deeper exploration of truth, strategy, and perception in the royal context. The moment the photograph surfaced, the reaction was immediate, intense, and global. Social media exploded with comments, retweets, shares, and reactions from every corner of the world. Royal watchers, journalists, casual followers, and celebrities alike weighed in, each offering their own interpretations and emotional responses. What had initially been a single image, a candid moment captured by a skilled photographer, rapidly became a symbol of perceived duplicity and strategic orchestration. Memes circulated, news outlets published analytical breakdowns, and pundits debated endlessly about intent, ethics, and the very nature of public image management. In the United Kingdom, newspapers ran with headlines that were impossible to ignore. The Telegraph, Daily Mail, and The Sun featured detailed analyses of the photograph, juxtaposing it against prior reported incidents of harassment and paparazzi confrontation. Editors highlighted the contrast between Meghan's public statements and the visual evidence of her engagement with photographers. Each article seemed to amplify the tension. Readers were presented with a narrative that suggested a complex interplay between victimhood and agency. The photograph became a focal point not merely for curiosity, but for debate about morality, transparency, and accountability. Public reaction online mirrored this intensity. Twitter threads exploded with speculation and opinion, with users dissecting Meghan's body language, facial expressions, and positioning. Was she smiling genuinely, or was the smile calculated? Were her gestures casual, or were they deliberate signals to control the photographer's behavior? Influencers, many with millions of followers, shared zoomed-in screenshots of the image, highlighting subtle details that suggested orchestration. TikTok creators made videos comparing this photograph to other moments in Meghan's public life, suggesting a pattern of careful media management that conflicted with her previously expressed experiences of harassment. Meanwhile, international news outlets picked up the story, amplifying its reach exponentially. In the United States, major networks like CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC covered the photograph, often framing it within the context of Meghan's ongoing media narrative and legal battles. Analysts discussed the potential consequences for the Duchess's credibility, her public image, and the perception of the royal family as a whole. Social media discussions became international, with audiences in Europe, Asia, and Australia weighing in on the implications, proving that in a connected world, a single photograph could spark a global discourse. The photograph's impact extended beyond individual opinions to institutional considerations. Royal aides and communications teams immediately convened to assess the potential fallout. Strategists debated how to respond, weighing the risks of issuing statements against the potential for further controversy. The core challenge was clear. Meghan's interactions with the media had always been a delicate balancing act, and the photograph suggested that the balance might have tipped. If the public perceived deliberate orchestration, it could undermine not only her credibility, but also the careful messaging efforts that had been in place for years. Legal experts entered the conversation, analyzing the photograph's potential implications for ongoing lawsuits and privacy claims. Meghan's team had previously pursued legal action against photographers and media outlets for alleged harassment and invasion of privacy. The photograph, however, introduced a complicating factor. If interactions with paparazzi were sometimes orchestrated, could that undermine claims of harassment in court? Lawyers discussed whether this image could be used by opposing parties as evidence of selective engagement or even manipulation, further complicating Meghan's legal strategy. Media commentators debated the ethical implications. Was it inherently wrong for Meghan to engage with photographers if doing so allowed her to control narrative outcomes? Could one be both strategic and authentic, balancing personal agency with vulnerability? Columnists explored the tension between empowerment and deception, acknowledging that in high-stakes public life, decisions are rarely straightforward. Every action is scrutinized, every gesture interpreted, and every choice has the potential to be reframed in ways that complicate public perception. The public's emotional reaction was equally complex. For some, the photograph confirmed suspicions of duplicity or calculated performance, prompting feelings of betrayal, disappointment, or even indignation. Others approached the image with nuance, acknowledging Meghan's strategic awareness while still empathizing with the pressures she faced as a royal navigating relentless media scrutiny. Family dynamics, gender expectations, and historical precedents of royal behavior added layers to the discussion. Many argued that controlling one's narrative in such an environment is a survival strategy rather than a moral failing. Social media polls, opinion pieces, and editorials reflected the polarized response. Questions dominated discussions. Could the Duchess's smile be genuine, or was it calculated? Were her interactions a means of self-protection or a form of manipulation? Could one experience real distress and simultaneously exercise media strategy? These inquiries were not rhetorical. They became the focal point of broader cultural and ethical debates. Audiences debated openly about the tension between authenticity and performance, using Meghan's photograph as a case study for the complexities of modern celebrity, media control, and public trust. In parallel, celebrity commentators offered their takes, further inflaming discussion. Some criticized the image as evidence of deception, while others defended Meghan's agency, noting that public figures often need to navigate hostile media landscapes strategically. Interviews with former paparazzi provided context, revealing the methods photographers use to capture high-value images and the ways celebrities can subtly influence outcomes. These expert insights added depth to the narrative, helping audiences understand that the photograph was not merely a scandalous image but a snapshot of a complex, high-stakes interaction between media and public figures. The photograph also reignited conversations about gender and power. Meghan, as a woman in the public eye, faced scrutiny not only for her choices, but also for how those choices intersected with societal expectations of vulnerability, authenticity, and morality. Critics argued that any perceived manipulation undermined her credibility, while supporters emphasized that strategic engagement is a form of empowerment in a system designed to constrain and judge women disproportionately. The image became a cultural touchpoint for discussions about modern female agency, the double standards applied to women in power, and the nuances of personal strategy versus public perception. At the same time, royal historians contextualized the photograph within the long history of monarchy and media relations. They pointed out that strategic interaction with the press is hardly unprecedented. Royals have historically engaged in careful media management, controlling narratives to maintain public support, protect family reputation, and navigate political landscapes. The photograph, therefore, was not an anomaly but part of a broader historical pattern, albeit one magnified in intensity due to Meghan's celebrity background and the instantaneous nature of modern media coverage. Yet, for all the historical parallels and analytical perspectives, the photograph had a raw emotional impact. For the public, it was a moment of confrontation with the unexpected, the realization that public personas are often layered, strategic, and sometimes contradictory. Audiences were compelled to reconsider their assumptions, reevaluate narratives, and confront the uncomfortable idea that reality and perception are often intertwined in ways that resist simple interpretation. It was not merely about Meghan Markle. It was about the broader human experience of navigating identity, public perception, and the negotiation between truth and strategy. As the photograph circulated further, its influence seeped into every facet of public discourse. It affected social media conversations, late-night talk shows, opinion pieces, and even everyday discussions among ordinary people. The image became a catalyst for reflection on the nature of celebrity, the pressures of modern media scrutiny, and the complexities of personal authenticity. It challenged audiences to think critically about how narratives are constructed, how images are interpreted, and how individual agency can coexist with public perception. In essence, the photograph was far more than a single snapshot in time. It became a lens through which to examine cultural expectations, media dynamics, and the intricate dance between vulnerability and strategy. For Meghan Markle, it was a turning point, an image that would be dissected, debated, and referenced in countless discussions about her character, her intentions, and her legacy within the royal family. For the public, it was a moment that blurred the lines between narrative, perception, and reality, prompting a deeper engagement with the complexities of modern celebrity life. The chapter closes by highlighting the profound impact of media on perception, the challenges of navigating celebrity within a royal framework, and the enduring consequences of one image in a world where every moment can be scrutinized, interpreted, and amplified. The next chapter will delve into Meghan's personal response and the strategic decisions she made in the wake of the storm, exploring the intersection of image management, public perception, and personal agency. As the photograph continued to dominate headlines and flood social media feeds, Meghan Markle retreated from the public eye, seeking to understand the ramifications of what had just been exposed. Behind closed doors, away from the glaring cameras and incessant commentary, she convened with her closest advisors and legal team to assess the potential fallout. This was not simply a moment of reflection. It was a strategic crossroads that demanded decisive action. The decisions made in this private setting would influence not only her personal reputation, but also the broader narrative surrounding the royal family and her own public persona. The first priority for Meghan and her team was damage control. Legal advisors emphasized the importance of clarifying the context of the photograph, stressing that without a complete understanding of the circumstances, assumptions could run rampant and inflict lasting harm. Statements were drafted with meticulous care, each word weighed for tone, implication, and potential media interpretation. The focus was on framing the interaction as innocuous, portraying the image as a candid moment rather than a deliberate orchestration of media manipulation. Yet, even in these careful formulations, the underlying tension was palpable. Every phrasing, every nuance, needed to account for the relentless scrutiny that would inevitably follow. Simultaneously, Meghan consulted with her communications team to craft a narrative that could counteract the immediate wave of criticism. Public appearances were rescheduled or modified to emphasize authenticity and transparency, highlighting charitable work, family engagements, and personal initiatives that reinforced her public commitments. Carefully staged photographs and selective interviews were orchestrated to project empathy, resilience, and relatability, aiming to remind the public of the human being behind the headlines. This approach required a delicate balance, appearing accessible and sincere without conceding to accusations of deception and maintaining dignity under the weight of global scrutiny. In addition to public-facing strategies, Meghan also explored more discreet avenues for controlling the story. Trusted journalists and media allies were briefed privately, ensuring that her perspective would be represented in long-form analyses, opinion pieces, and interviews. This network of sympathetic voices provided a counterbalance to the prevailing narrative, offering context, clarification, and occasionally, behind-the-scenes insights intended to shape public understanding. The use of these carefully cultivated channels reflected a sophisticated understanding of modern media dynamics, recognizing that perception is often as influential as fact in shaping reputations. Psychologically, the exposure of the photograph exerted immense pressure. Meghan reportedly experienced a spectrum of emotions: frustration at being misrepresented, anxiety over the potential long-term impact on her credibility, and resolve to assert control over the narrative. Confidence described her as intensely focused during this period, reviewing past interviews, media statements, and public appearances to anticipate potential criticism. She examined how each prior action could be interpreted in light of the photograph, identifying vulnerabilities and crafting responses in advance. This meticulous attention to detail highlighted the strategic acumen required to navigate the unique intersection of celebrity, royalty, and media scrutiny. Family dynamics further complicated the situation. Prince Harry, aware of the growing controversy, reportedly provided both emotional support and strategic counsel. Conversations between them centered on the broader implications of media exposure, the potential consequences for their children, and the importance of maintaining a united front. Sources close to the couple indicated that discussions were candid and intense, acknowledging the pressures of public life while negotiating the tension between personal authenticity and image management. These private deliberations underscored the high stakes involved. The photograph was not merely a momentary embarrassment, but a trigger for deeper reflection on public strategy, reputation, and familial cohesion. Meghan's advisors also explored the potential for legal recourse. The photograph had surfaced without prior consent, raising questions about privacy infringement, unauthorized publication, and potential defamation. Legal teams considered multiple avenues, sending cease and desist letters, negotiating with media outlets, and, if necessary, pursuing formal litigation to assert control over distribution. Each option carried risks. Legal action could attract additional media attention, amplify the controversy, or inadvertently confirm public suspicions. Navigating this terrain required a precise understanding of media law, public relations, and the unpredictable dynamics of public perception. Another element of Meghan's strategy involved proactive storytelling. She began considering opportunities to shape her narrative on her own terms, exploring interviews, memoirs, and media projects that could provide first-hand context. By presenting her perspective directly, Meghan sought to mitigate the distortions created by third-party interpretation. The idea was to reclaim agency, positioning herself as an authoritative voice in a media environment often characterized by speculation and conjecture. This approach reflected a broader understanding of contemporary fame. Controlling the narrative is as crucial as managing appearances, and preemptive engagement can redefine public discourse. Throughout this period, Meghan also engaged in careful observation of media responses. Every article, broadcast segment, and social media trend was analyzed to gauge public sentiment and anticipate the next wave of scrutiny. Her team monitored the amplification of the story across international markets, noting where narratives diverged and identifying opportunities to reinforce favorable interpretations. This level of monitoring illustrated the complexity of managing a global image, where perceptions are shaped not only by direct actions, but also by the vast ecosystem of commentary, analysis, and viral dissemination. Amid these strategic efforts, Meghan also sought to preserve personal equilibrium. Close friends and advisors emphasized the importance of mental resilience, private reflection, and maintaining connections outside of public scrutiny. Personal routines, mindfulness practices, and trusted confidants became anchors in an environment characterized by relentless attention and judgment. Balancing emotional well-being with the demands of public image management was not merely a personal necessity. It was a strategic imperative, ensuring that responses were thoughtful, measured, and aligned with long-term objectives. The chapter also explores the ethical considerations Meghan faced. Decisions about public messaging, private disclosures, and media engagement were weighed against personal values, public expectations, and the potential consequences for her family. Every action carried moral and reputational implications, reinforcing the intricate calculus required to navigate a high-profile life where privacy, perception, and influence intersect. These deliberations highlighted the dual challenge of protecting oneself from misrepresentation while maintaining credibility and trustworthiness in the eyes of a global audience. In sum, Meghan's response to the photograph was multifaceted, deliberate, and intensely strategic. It combined legal considerations, media engagement, personal reflection, and ethical deliberation, illustrating the complexities of navigating life under the global spotlight. Far from a reactive retreat, her actions demonstrated a calculated approach to controlling narrative, preserving reputation, and managing both immediate fallout and long-term perception. This chapter sets the stage for examining the broader consequences of the photograph on her public image, relationships within the royal family, and interactions with the media landscape. The moment the photograph surfaced, the media frenzy was instantaneous. International outlets from London to Los Angeles, from tabloids to mainstream news channels, scrambled to cover the story. The image of Meghan Markle, smiling and appearing to negotiate with paparazzi, was dissected frame by frame, each detail analyzed for evidence of intent, deception, or strategic manipulation. Headlines blared in bold, some accusing her of orchestrating harassment, others questioning her authenticity, and a few even suggesting a calculated attempt to manipulate public sentiment. In an era dominated by click-driven journalism, the photograph became a viral commodity, shared millions of times within hours of its release. Social media platforms amplified the controversy exponentially. Twitter threads stretched for miles, each comment a microanalysis of her actions. Instagram accounts posted side-by-side comparisons of Meghan in the photograph and images from subsequent staged harassment encounters. TikTok creators compiled montage videos, emphasizing perceived contradictions and generating rapid-fire discussions. Memes proliferated, ranging from lighthearted humor to pointed criticism, each contributing to a swirling storm of perception. The virality of the image created a new kind of pressure, one that transcended traditional media, where public opinion was shaped in real time by millions of individual interpretations. Public response was polarized. A segment of royal enthusiasts and Meghan supporters defended her vigorously, arguing that the photograph represented a moment taken out of context, emphasizing that public appearances are often mediated and staged for safety and security reasons. They highlighted that paparazzi interactions are inherently complex, involving negotiation, consent, and careful management of personal boundaries. Yet another faction of the public reacted with skepticism and outrage, interpreting the photograph as proof of deceit, manipulation, and hypocrisy. These contrasting perspectives fueled endless debates on forums, news comment sections, and social media feeds, creating a climate of heightened scrutiny and emotionally charged discourse. Traditional media outlets weighed in with in-depth analyses and expert commentary. Royal correspondents dissected every angle of the photograph, consulting former palace staff, paparazzi, and media ethics experts. Opinions varied widely. Some argued that Meghan's engagement with photographers was a pragmatic necessity for personal security and media management, while others insisted it demonstrated a deliberate orchestration of events that she later condemned publicly. Journalists pointed to historical precedents, comparing her situation with other members of the royal family who had been photographed in similar circumstances, and examined patterns of media manipulation and public perception in celebrity culture. These expert insights added layers of context, yet also complicated the narrative, leaving audiences to navigate a spectrum of interpretations. The timing of the photograph's release added another dimension to the controversy. Media analysts noted that it emerged amid ongoing debates about Meghan and Prince Harry's role in the monarchy, their relationship with the press, and prior public statements regarding paparazzi harassment. The convergence of these factors magnified the photograph's impact, transforming it from a single image into a symbol of broader tensions between celebrity, media scrutiny, and the royal institution. Each news cycle referenced not only the photograph itself, but also prior controversies, creating a feedback loop of discussion, criticism, and speculation that sustained attention for weeks. In response, media strategists for Meghan and Prince Harry faced the difficult task of managing the narrative in real time. Press releases, social media posts, and selective interviews were deployed strategically, aiming to provide context, clarify intent, and counter misinterpretation. They emphasized security concerns, personal safety, and the challenges inherent in navigating public life under constant scrutiny. Spokespeople highlighted the discrepancy between public perception and reality, illustrating how staged moments can often be misread by an audience with incomplete information. Every statement was scrutinized for tone, phrasing, and potential impact, reflecting the delicate balance required to protect reputation while remaining transparent and credible. The photograph also reignited debates about media ethics. Journalism forums and professional associations discussed whether the release constituted an invasion of privacy, questioning the responsibilities of photographers and outlets when dealing with public figures. Discussions considered the ethics of releasing images without consent, the role of public interest, and the potential harm to the individuals involved. Critics argued that even high-profile figures deserve a degree of privacy, while others contended that visibility comes with responsibility, particularly when public statements contrast with private actions. This debate transcended Meghan herself, touching on larger societal questions about the intersection of fame, accountability, and personal boundaries in the digital age. Public commentary often blended personal opinion with cultural analysis. Editorial pieces reflected on the nature of authenticity in the age of social media, celebrity, and performative public life. Commentators asked probing questions. To what extent can public figures genuinely separate private action from public persona? How much responsibility does a celebrity bear for controlling the narrative around their image? Are staged interactions inherently deceptive, or are they practical measures to navigate complex media ecosystems? These questions resonated widely, sparking discussions that extended far beyond royal circles into mainstream debates about trust, authenticity, and media literacy. The photograph's impact extended to related figures in the royal family. Analysts examined how Harry might respond, the potential influence on William and Kate's public perception, and whether palace advisors would adjust media strategies in light of renewed scrutiny. Some suggested that the image could intensify internal tensions, influence public support for the monarchy, or prompt a reassessment of press engagement policies. In parallel, historians and royal commentators contextualized the photograph within the broader narrative of media-royal interactions, drawing comparisons to past scandals and analyzing the evolving relationship between the press and the institution. Meanwhile, the general public was not merely a passive observer. Online communities formed around defending or criticizing Meghan, sharing analyses, creating polls, and speculating on motivations. The photograph became a cultural touchpoint, referenced in memes, commentary, and discussion forums. Psychologists and media analysts weighed in on the phenomenon, examining how viral images shape perception, influence judgment, and reinforce biases. The case became a study in modern media dynamics, highlighting the power of visual storytelling, audience engagement, and social validation in shaping collective opinion. The chapter concludes by emphasizing the scale and intensity of the media explosion. From international headlines to viral social media content, from expert commentary to public debate, the photograph had created a multifaceted impact, influencing perceptions, sparking ethical debates, and redefining the discourse surrounding Meghan Markle. The public outcry was not a singular event, but a prolonged cascade of reactions, each building upon the last, demonstrating the potency of visual media in the modern age and the intricate interplay between celebrity, press, and public sentiment. The aftermath of this media storm set the stage for examining Meghan's subsequent actions, her engagement with allies, and the strategic measures taken to reclaim narrative control. Understanding the magnitude of public and media response is essential to appreciating the complexities she faced and the calculated decisions required to navigate the fallout. Chapter 7 will explore these dimensions in depth, focusing on the intersection of perception, strategy, and influence in the weeks following the photograph's exposure. In the wake of the photograph's explosive release, Meghan Markle and her team faced a monumental challenge: how to navigate the sudden public scrutiny and restore control over a narrative that had shifted dramatically against them. For Meghan, this was not merely a matter of reputation management. It was about maintaining credibility, protecting personal safety, and ensuring that her broader message regarding media harassment and personal privacy remained intact. Every public statement, every interview, and every social media post became a calculated move on a high-stakes chessboard where timing, tone, and optics were paramount. Initially, Meghan's representatives issued carefully worded statements to major media outlets, emphasizing the complexities inherent in interactions with paparazzi. They highlighted that public figures often encounter situations where photographs are taken without consent, yet the optics of engagement can be misinterpreted. They stressed that safety and security considerations sometimes necessitate engagement with photographers, whether to negotiate a safe exit, to de-escalate tension, or to manage the proximity of the press to oneself and family members. These statements aim to reframe the narrative, positioning Meghan not as deceitful, but as strategically navigating a hazardous media environment. Behind the scenes, Meghan's team coordinated with media advisors, legal counsel, and trusted allies to develop a multi-layered damage control strategy. They began by identifying the primary sources of the photograph and the channels through which it had circulated. Legal teams examined potential violations of privacy laws and explored avenues to limit further dissemination of the image. At the same time, communications experts crafted talking points for upcoming interviews, public appearances, and social media messaging, ensuring a consistent, coherent, and defensible explanation for the photograph's context. Every move was measured against potential backlash, legal ramifications, and public perception, reflecting the high stakes of celebrity reputation management. Concurrently, Meghan took an active role in managing the narrative herself. Insider reports suggest she held private meetings with close advisors to discuss public statements and media strategy. She considered multiple scenarios, whether to address the photograph directly, to contextualize it within broader interactions with the press, or to maintain silence while allowing her team to manage the fallout. Each approach had potential benefits and risks. Speaking out might offer clarity but risked amplifying criticism. Silence could appear evasive yet might avoid further controversy. Meghan's decisions reflected an acute awareness of the delicate balance between transparency, privacy, and narrative control. Public appearances during this period were meticulously planned. Meghan understood that every gesture, smile, and interaction would be scrutinized in the context of the photograph. Security teams coordinated routes and schedules to minimize unpredictable encounters with paparazzi while ensuring visibility for key engagements. Photographers at official events were briefed on permissible angles and limitations, while social media content was curated to emphasize authenticity, empathy, and resilience. These orchestrated appearances were intended not merely as public duties, but as strategic communications tools to reinforce Meghan's image as poised, responsible, and measured in the face of intense scrutiny. The strategic response extended beyond traditional media channels. Social media played a critical role in shaping public perception. Meghan and her team leveraged platforms to share carefully selected photographs, quotes, and statements that illustrated her perspective and highlighted her charitable work, personal initiatives, and ongoing commitments to advocacy. Hashtags were employed thoughtfully to frame conversations, amplify supportive voices, and counteract negative narratives. Influencers and allies within media and entertainment circles were engaged to provide commentary, endorsements, or contextual analysis that reinforced the narrative being advanced. This digital strategy reflected an understanding of the virality and reach of online platforms, as well as the need to actively participate in shaping discourse rather than remaining reactive. Experts in media relations noted that Meghan's approach was multifaceted and sophisticated. They pointed out that she balanced assertive defense with empathetic storytelling, demonstrating both accountability and resilience. By presenting herself as a human navigating complex circumstances rather than a figure orchestrating deception, she sought to rebuild trust and credibility with diverse audiences. Media consultants emphasized that this approach, while not immune to criticism, effectively countered initial narratives and redirected focus toward broader themes of privacy, harassment, and public perception management. Amid these calculated actions, Meghan also relied on personal networks for guidance and support. Close advisors, friends within the entertainment industry, and select members of the royal inner circle offered counsel, insights, and feedback on messaging strategies. Reports indicate that daily briefings were conducted, with adjustments made in response to real-time media coverage, social sentiment, and emerging controversies. This constant vigilance highlighted the relentless nature of public life under scrutiny, where every image, statement, and interaction carries the potential to shape perception for global audiences. Despite careful planning, the photograph continued to fuel debate and speculation. Commentators dissected Meghan's every move, searching for inconsistencies, analyzing body language, and drawing conclusions about intent and authenticity. Public discourse ranged from sympathetic analyses emphasizing media pressure to critical assessments asserting that the image revealed duplicity. This ongoing scrutiny underscored the enduring power of a single photograph to influence narratives, shape public opinion, and challenge even meticulously orchestrated responses. Amid this backdrop, Meghan's strategy also included proactive narrative framing. Interviews, op-eds, and public statements were used to emphasize themes of resilience, empowerment, and the challenges of navigating public life under constant observation. By controlling elements of the story herself, she sought to shift the conversation from accusation to context, from controversy to understanding. Allies within media outlets were enlisted to provide supportive perspectives, highlighting instances of harassment, contextualizing interactions, and challenging simplistic interpretations of complex events. The release of the photograph depicting Meghan Markle in a seemingly conspiratorial interaction with paparazzi ignited an immediate and intense public reaction. Social media platforms erupted with speculation, judgment, and debate, with the image circulating across millions of feeds within hours. In the age of instantaneous information, the photograph was no longer just a single image. It became a symbol, a visual representation of perceived deception that ignited discussion not only in the United Kingdom, but around the globe. Hashtags surged, trending topics appeared on Twitter, and discussion forums brimmed with polarized opinions. The public was confronted with a scenario that forced them to question the authenticity of a woman who had cultivated a carefully constructed public persona centered on honesty, transparency, and advocacy against media intrusion. Critics of Meghan were swift and merciless. Pundits, bloggers, and tabloid journalists dissected the photograph, scrutinizing body language, facial expressions, and the setting. Analysts framed the interaction as evidence of manipulation, presenting it as proof that Meghan staged media harassment moments to advance her image while criticizing press intrusion publicly. Headlines highlighted words like deception, manipulation, and contradiction, crafting a narrative that suggested deliberate duplicity. Opinion pieces drew lines between the photograph and previous interviews where Meghan condemned paparazzi aggression, presenting a seeming contrast that fueled public outrage. Each news cycle added layers of analysis, intensifying the scrutiny and perpetuating a sense of scandal. Meanwhile, supporters of Meghan rushed to provide context and counterarguments. Commentators pointed to the complexities of interacting with paparazzi, the potential risks involved in public exposure, and the pressures faced by high-profile individuals constantly under surveillance. They emphasized that the photograph could represent a moment of negotiation or management for safety, rather than deceit, framing Meghan as a figure navigating an inherently perilous and invasive media environment. Social media campaigns highlighted her charitable work, advocacy efforts, and contributions to public discourse, attempting to redirect conversation away from the photograph and toward broader, more substantive aspects of her public role. These counter-narratives were instrumental in maintaining a semblance of balance amid the viral storm. The viral nature of the backlash transformed the photograph into a cultural phenomenon. Memes, parodies, and satirical commentaries spread rapidly, magnifying both criticism and humor. Influencers and celebrity commentators weighed in, further amplifying exposure. The speed and scale of the dissemination were unprecedented, reflecting the realities of modern media where a single image can catalyze global conversation within minutes. Traditional media outlets reported on social media reactions themselves, creating a feedback loop where coverage and online discussion fueled each other, intensifying public attention and magnifying perceived controversy. One of the most significant aspects of the backlash was its emotional resonance with the public. Many viewers expressed feelings of betrayal, interpreting the photograph as evidence that Meghan's public narrative did not align with private actions. Questions arose about authenticity, integrity, and the motivations behind her media engagements. The image became a lens through which broader debates regarding celebrity culture, media manipulation, and trust in public figures were refracted. Audiences grappled not only with the specific incident, but also with broader implications about transparency and honesty in the lives of those they admired or followed. Media outlets quickly capitalized on the photograph's viral momentum. Editorials framed it within ongoing narratives about Meghan and Prince Harry's strained relationship with the press. Journalists revisited prior statements, interviews, and public appearances, juxtaposing them against the newly released image to suggest a pattern of contradictory behavior. Television segments featured pundits debating the implications, often dramatizing the scenario to maintain viewer engagement. Each subsequent appearance of the photograph in media coverage reignited discussion, ensuring that the image remained at the forefront of public consciousness for weeks following its release. In the midst of the public storm, Meghan's team monitored sentiment closely. Social media analytics provided real-time insights into public perception, identifying trends, spikes in engagement, and areas of heightened criticism. These insights informed subsequent communication strategies, guiding the timing, tone, and content of public statements. Advisors advised Meghan on when to appear in public, which interviews to grant, and how to craft messages that balance transparency with strategic narrative control. The objective was to manage fallout without appearing defensive, turning what could have been a devastating blow into an opportunity for measured public engagement. Despite these efforts, the backlash was not uniform. Cultural commentators noted a generational divide, with younger audiences often more sympathetic to Meghan, considering factors such as the pressures of social media, the impact of systemic bias in media coverage, and the double standards applied to women in the public eye. Older demographics, conversely, were more likely to interpret the photograph as evidence of calculated media manipulation. This divergence underscored the complexity of public perception, illustrating that the photograph was not simply a scandal, but a lens through which broader societal dynamics were being debated and contested. The viral storm also prompted reflection among media professionals themselves. Some journalists questioned the ethics of amplifying a single image to construct a narrative, debating whether the photograph's context was being sufficiently considered. Media ethicists highlighted the tension between public interest and sensationalism, noting that the rush to publish and comment often sacrifices nuance and accuracy. These discussions added another layer to the controversy, framing the debate not only around Meghan's actions, but also around the responsibilities of those reporting and interpreting them. As the public backlash unfolded, it became clear that the photograph had far-reaching implications for Meghan's public image. It challenged perceptions of authenticity, tested the resilience of her reputation, and provoked intense debate about the nature of celebrity and media relations. Yet it also offered an opportunity. By strategically addressing criticism, providing context, and maintaining consistent messaging, Meghan had the potential to reshape the narrative and assert control over how she was perceived moving forward. The fallout from the photograph was not confined to public discourse and media frenzy. Within the walls of the royal family, the image sparked intense discussions, concern, and strategic deliberations. The palace, known for its intricate protocols and carefully managed public image, suddenly faced a new challenge: how to respond to a situation that not only implicated Meghan Markle personally, but also threatened to reflect on the broader royal institution. Conversations within the family were reportedly tense, a mix of frustration, worry, and cautious calculation as advisors, courtiers, and senior royals weighed the implications of the photograph for both immediate reputation management and long-term public perception. Sources close to the palace indicated that the initial reaction was one of shock. Although the royal family had been aware of Meghan's challenges with the press, few expected the rapid spread and viral nature of a photograph depicting her negotiating with paparazzi. For King Charles, Prince William, and senior advisors, the photograph represented more than an individual controversy. It touched on larger concerns regarding media relations, credibility, and the perception of authenticity in public life. In a royal household where every public action is scrutinized, the image raised urgent questions about control, oversight, and the narrative being conveyed to the public. The palace communications team convened immediately. Their goal was to assess potential risks and craft responses that would mitigate damage while adhering to established protocols. Advisors debated whether to issue a formal statement, allow Meghan to address the matter independently, or maintain silence to avoid further amplification of the controversy. Legal experts were consulted to evaluate whether the photograph constituted a breach of privacy, an ethical violation by the photographer, or a permissible public exposure. The deliberations highlighted the complexity of managing crises in an institution where tradition, protocol, and public scrutiny intersect in highly sensitive ways. Meanwhile, members of the royal family expressed personal concern. Senior royals were reportedly worried about how the photograph would affect public opinion not only toward Meghan, but also toward the family as a whole. Discussions included the potential impact on charitable initiatives, public engagements, and ongoing media projects. Courtiers and advisors emphasized the need to maintain unity and composure in public statements, ensuring that any response conveyed a sense of dignity, restraint, and measured concern without exacerbating the controversy. This balance proved delicate, as the photograph had already generated polarized reactions, and any misstep could amplify criticism or inflame public debate further. Internally, there was also debate about Meghan's motives and intentions. Some senior figures reportedly viewed the image as confirmation of a broader strategy of media engagement that contradicted public claims of harassment or mistreatment. Others cautioned against overinterpretation, suggesting that the photograph might reflect a moment of negotiation for safety or practical reasons rather than deliberate manipulation. These divergent perspectives underscored a central tension: how to evaluate actions that occurred in complex, high-pressure situations while considering both individual and institutional interests. The royal family's public response was equally strategic. In carefully orchestrated appearances and statements, the family emphasized themes of privacy, security, and respect for all individuals involved. By addressing general principles rather than commenting on Meghan's specific actions, the royals sought to reinforce institutional values while avoiding direct confrontation or amplification of the photograph's controversy. Public messaging emphasized the family's commitment to ethical media engagement, careful stewardship of reputation, and support for members navigating the unique pressures of life in the public eye. This approach aimed to maintain credibility, project stability, and protect the monarchy from further reputational harm. At the same time, internal discussions considered the broader implications for future media interactions. Advisors explored measures to prevent similar incidents, including tighter security protocols, more controlled press engagements, and clearer guidance for family members on managing paparazzi encounters. These deliberations reflected an understanding that a single image, even when framed as a momentary lapse, could have long-lasting effects on public trust and institutional integrity. Lessons learned from the incident were integrated into ongoing training, media preparation, and strategic planning for all members of the royal household. Outside the palace, reactions from royal commentators and biographers added another layer of complexity. Analysts with deep knowledge of the family's history weighed in, interpreting the photograph in the context of prior controversies, public statements, and long-standing tensions between Meghan and other members of the family. Books, interviews, and opinion pieces emerged, offering varied perspectives that influenced public sentiment and shaped the narrative for weeks following the release. Some commentators emphasized accountability and transparency, while others highlighted the pressures and challenges inherent in public life, painting Meghan as both a strategist and a target of relentless media scrutiny. In response to the ongoing public debate, select members of the family engaged in private outreach. Conversations with trusted advisors, media contacts, and diplomatic intermediaries were conducted to assess the impact on public perception and to identify opportunities for clarification, reassurance, or mitigation. These efforts reflected a nuanced understanding of modern media dynamics, where indirect engagement, personal networks, and carefully timed communications can shape narratives as effectively as formal statements or official appearances. The royal family also considered the long-term consequences of the photograph for Meghan's role and responsibilities. Discussions reportedly included evaluations of public engagements, charity work, and potential media projects, with attention to how ongoing scrutiny might affect her effectiveness and credibility. Advisors balanced the need to support family members with the broader imperative of protecting the monarchy's reputation, demonstrating the intricate calculations that define crisis management in highly visible institutions. The photograph of Meghan Markle negotiating with paparazzi became more than a viral sensation. It triggered a full-scale media frenzy that reverberated across traditional news outlets, online platforms, and social media channels. What began as a single captured moment escalated into a multi-layered story dissected from every possible angle, with journalists, commentators, and content creators offering interpretations, analyses, and speculation. The media storm exemplified the modern dynamics of celebrity coverage, where an image alone could drive headlines, shape narratives, and spark widespread public discourse. In the first hours after the image surfaced, news organizations scrambled to contextualize the event. Headlines ranged from neutral reportage to sensational framing, with some outlets emphasizing the apparent contradiction between Meghan's public statements condemning paparazzi harassment and the image depicting her smiling and negotiating with photographers. Leading tabloids highlighted phrases such as staged moment, media manipulation, and hidden truth, ensuring maximum engagement and click-through rates. Television news programs devoted segments to breaking down the photograph, using slow-motion replays, freeze frames, and side-by-side comparisons with other public appearances to suggest a calculated orchestration of press interactions. The frenzy extended to online commentary, where social media platforms became arenas for debate, judgment, and viral opinion sharing. Twitter threads dissected body language, facial expressions, and hand gestures, often drawing conclusions about intent and character. Instagram pages and YouTube channels uploaded compilations juxtaposing Meghan's public condemnations of paparazzi behavior with the newly released image, framing a visual narrative that implied hypocrisy. Memes and satirical content emerged almost instantly, amplifying criticism and cementing the photograph's place in digital culture. Each post, retweet, and share further accelerated the dissemination, demonstrating the exponential reach of modern media and amplifying controversy. Professional commentators added layers of analysis, often blending expertise with speculation. Media analysts, body language experts, and celebrity psychologists weighed in, offering interpretations that ranged from strategic negotiation to deliberate deception. These insights were amplified by news outlets seeking authority and credibility, with phrases like insider perspective and expert analysis lending weight to public perception. Opinion columns debated ethical considerations, questioning whether Meghan's actions were simply a tactical response to an intrusive press environment or a calculated attempt to manipulate public opinion. The intensity of coverage highlighted the intersection of personal behavior, media ethics, and public trust in the lives of high-profile figures. The public response mirrored the media's intensity. Audiences engaged actively, sharing their own interpretations, feelings, and judgments. Some expressed outrage, viewing the image as confirmation of a narrative of deceit, while others offered nuanced perspectives, emphasizing the pressures of constant scrutiny and the complexities of negotiating personal safety with public appearances. Discussions often transcended Meghan's individual actions, evolving into broader debates about celebrity culture, media ethics, and the treatment of women in the public eye. Comment sections, forums, and community pages became microcosms of larger societal conversations, reflecting polarized opinions and the emotional stakes invested by viewers worldwide. The frenzy also prompted a surge in interviews and public statements. Journalists contacted royal insiders, photographers, and media professionals to obtain context, while some media outlets sought commentary from individuals who had worked closely with Meghan on prior projects. These interviews often revealed conflicting narratives. Some painted the photograph as a routine media engagement, others emphasized potential strategic intent. Each narrative contributed to the complexity of public perception, demonstrating that even first-hand accounts could be interpreted in multiple ways depending on framing, context, and underlying assumptions. In the realm of traditional print media, the photograph's coverage was extensive and ongoing. Newspapers published detailed timelines of Meghan's prior interactions with the press, highlighting patterns of behavior and referencing past interviews where she criticized paparazzi tactics. Editorials debated the ethical dimensions, questioning whether public figures could simultaneously manage and condemn media attention without compromising credibility. Photographs, sidebars, and graphic representations were used to draw visual comparisons, reinforcing narratives of contradiction and shaping readers' interpretations before they could even form independent opinions. Television coverage, meanwhile, focused on the visual and emotional impact. Morning shows, news programs, and panel discussions dedicated significant airtime to analyzing the photograph. Pundits debated Meghan's intent, credibility, and media strategy, often juxtaposing the image with previous footage of public appearances or statements. Emotional language dominated discussions, with phrases like shocking revelation, hidden agenda, and calculated performance, creating a heightened sense of drama. Producers emphasized suspense and viewer engagement, using commercial breaks, dramatic narration, and repeated visual analysis to ensure the story remained compelling and captivating throughout the broadcast cycle. Social media amplification played a particularly critical role. Influencers and digital content creators shared opinions, memes, and video breakdowns that rapidly reached millions of followers. Platforms such as TikTok featured short, emotionally charged clips interpreting the photograph, while Instagram stories and Reels offered quick visual narratives that reinforced key talking points. The speed at which content was created and disseminated ensured that the photograph remained a dominant topic of conversation for days and weeks following its release. The viral nature of these posts exemplified the unique power of digital media to shape public perception almost instantaneously. The photograph also sparked discussions about media ethics and the responsibilities of journalists. Critics debated whether the image was being used to unfairly malign Meghan or whether it legitimately exposed inconsistencies in her public persona. Media ethicists highlighted the challenges of reporting on high-profile individuals in an age where every action can be scrutinized and decontextualized. This meta-narrative, the debate about reporting itself, added depth to the controversy, encouraging audiences to consider the complex interplay between public exposure, editorial decisions, and audience interpretation. Finally, the media frenzy underscored the enduring tension between privacy and publicity. Meghan's situation illustrated the challenges faced by public figures navigating constant scrutiny while attempting to maintain personal agency and control over their narrative. Every photograph, statement, and public appearance became subject to layered interpretation, reflecting broader societal questions about transparency, accountability, and the nature of celebrity in the digital age. The photograph, therefore, was not merely a single moment frozen in time. It became a catalyst for debate, reflection, and emotional investment on a global scale. In the wake of the photograph's public release and the ensuing media frenzy, Meghan Markle faced an unprecedented moment of scrutiny that tested both her personal resolve and professional acumen. The image, depicting her smiling and negotiating with paparazzi, challenged the narrative she had carefully cultivated over years of public life, that she was a victim of relentless media harassment, a figure unfairly targeted by the press. Suddenly, this new visual evidence suggested a far more complex story, one in which Meghan might have actively engaged with the very media she later criticized. Within hours of the photograph surfacing, Meghan's team sprang into action. Public relations strategists, legal advisors, and communications experts convened to assess the potential fallout and formulate a response. The objective was clear: contain the damage, control the narrative, and protect Meghan's reputation while navigating the delicate balance between transparency and deflection. Statements were drafted, interviews scheduled, and social media messaging coordinated, all aimed at reframing the story in a manner that emphasized context, personal safety, and media manipulation rather than deliberate deceit. Meghan herself, understanding the stakes, took a proactive approach. Insider accounts suggest that she personally reviewed multiple talking points, rehearsing phrasing and anticipating the angles journalists might pursue. Her approach combined empathy with assertiveness, acknowledging the public's concern while subtly redirecting focus onto the broader pressures she had faced from constant media scrutiny. In interviews, she stressed the complexity of celebrity life, the blurred lines between staged appearances and genuine encounters, and the psychological toll of navigating a world where every interaction could be captured, judged, and disseminated globally. Legal considerations also played a central role in Meghan's response strategy. Advisors reviewed potential avenues for recourse, including cease and desist communications with certain media outlets and legal challenges against unauthorized use of images that could imply misconduct or dishonesty. These measures were intended not only to protect Meghan's immediate reputation, but also to set a precedent for how similar situations might be handled in the future. Legal teams meticulously examined the photograph, the surrounding context, and prior press agreements, emphasizing the importance of nuanced argumentation over reactive confrontation. Simultaneously, Meghan's public statements were carefully calibrated to maintain authenticity. Rather than issuing outright denials, which could appear defensive, Her communications focused on highlighting context, intent, and the pressures inherent in public life. She acknowledged the challenges of media interactions while emphasizing that smiles, gestures, and negotiations were often practical measures of self-preservation in an environment where safety and perception were constantly intertwined. By framing the photograph as part of a complex, nuanced reality, Meghan aimed to shift the conversation from accusation to understanding. Digital platforms became crucial tools in her strategic response. Social media channels, official statements, and controlled interviews were deployed to reach audiences directly, bypassing the interpretive filters of traditional media. Posts on Instagram and Twitter highlighted philanthropic work, family moments, and behind-the-scenes insights, reminding the public of her broader persona beyond the controversy. These communications sought to reinforce credibility, demonstrate transparency, and subtly counteract narratives that portrayed her as manipulative or deceitful. The digital strategy underscored the importance of controlling messaging in an age where public perception could be instantly shaped by viral imagery and algorithm-driven amplification. Public perception, however, remained a volatile landscape. Opinion polls, social media sentiment analysis, and comment sections reflected a deeply divided audience. Some viewers accepted Meghan's explanations, recognizing the pressures of public life and the complexities of media negotiation. Others remained skeptical, interpreting the photograph as evidence of deliberate orchestration and inconsistency. These polarized reactions highlighted the challenge of navigating reputational crises in the modern era. Even carefully crafted communications could not fully neutralize controversy or anticipate the diversity of audience interpretation. Media analysts noted that Meghan's response strategy combined three core elements: narrative framing, timing, and emotional resonance. Narrative framing involved contextualizing the photograph within broader experiences of public scrutiny, emphasizing that interactions with paparazzi were often unavoidable and strategic rather than inherently deceptive. Timing focused on releasing statements and interviews in a manner that preempted speculation, ensuring that her perspective was accessible before interpretations solidified in the public consciousness. Emotional resonance emphasized authenticity, empathy, and relatability, allowing audiences to connect with her experience rather than simply react to visual evidence. Despite these efforts, the photograph continued to generate discussion across international media markets. Newspapers in the United Kingdom, the United States, and Europe revisited the image in op-eds, editorials, and feature stories, debating implications for Meghan's credibility and media strategy. Television programs featured roundtable discussions with journalists, photographers, and royal commentators, each analyzing minute details in gestures, expressions, and positioning. Social media discourse evolved rapidly, with content creators producing analysis videos, reaction threads, and compilations contrasting prior public statements with the newly surfaced image. Meghan's communications sought to navigate this constant feedback loop, emphasizing context and intention without fueling further polarization. The palace, often perceived as an impenetrable institution of tradition, protocol, and restraint, found itself suddenly thrust into uncharted territory. The release of the photograph showing Meghan Markle engaging with paparazzi in a seemingly strategic manner was not merely a media issue. It became a royal crisis, challenging the careful equilibrium that the monarchy had painstakingly maintained. For decades, the royal family had cultivated a controlled narrative, balancing public interest with privacy, tradition with modernity. Now, that delicate balance was threatened, and the palace felt the tremors immediately. Behind the closed doors of Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle, aides and senior staff convened emergency meetings. Communications teams pored over the photograph, scrutinizing every detail: how Meghan stood, the direction of her gaze, the subtle curve of her smile. Each nuance was analyzed for potential ramifications. Advisors debated how to respond. Whether to issue a statement, engage in damage control through media channels, or maintain silence to avoid drawing further attention. The tension in the rooms was palpable, as every decision carried weight not just for Meghan, but for the public perception of the royal family as a whole. Insiders reported a mix of shock, disbelief, and frustration among family members. Some senior royals reportedly felt betrayed, believing that Meghan had intentionally orchestrated an image that could be perceived as contradictory to the narrative she publicly championed. The idea that a member of the royal family might manipulate media coverage, even subtly, went against the unspoken codes of behavior that had governed the institution for centuries. In hushed conversations, staff members wondered whether this photograph represented a larger pattern of strategic self-presentation and what it meant for trust and unity within the family. The internal response was far from uniform. Some senior aides and courtiers advocated for immediate intervention. They argued that a direct approach, addressing the photograph publicly and clarifying the Duchess's intentions, would demonstrate transparency and uphold the family's credibility. Others cautioned restraint, warning that any statement could backfire, further inflaming public opinion and giving the media endless material for debate. The palace, accustomed to carefully scripted statements and controlled appearances, faced the challenge of navigating a spontaneous controversy that it could neither predict nor fully control. Prince William, often regarded as the stabilizing force within the family, reportedly expressed deep concern. Advisors recalled private conversations in which he emphasized the importance of maintaining trust with the public while protecting the dignity of the monarchy. The photograph's release posed a direct challenge to both objectives. It raised questions about accountability and transparency, and its potential to undermine confidence in the institution could not be ignored. For William, the concern was not simply about Meghan, but about the ripple effects of perceived duplicity on the monarchy's reputation, especially during an era of heightened scrutiny and evolving public expectations. Prince Harry's reaction was equally complex, tinged with frustration and defensiveness. Loyal to Meghan and aware of the pressure she faced, he viewed the photograph through the lens of media intrusion and public misunderstanding. From his perspective, the image captured a moment taken out of context, one that did not reflect the entirety of her experiences or intentions. Nonetheless, even he recognized that the optics were challenging. Conversations within the family reportedly oscillated between defending the Duchess and acknowledging the public relations dilemma created by the photograph. Harry's loyalty to Meghan collided with the broader concerns of maintaining royal decorum and credibility. The Queen, though briefed sparingly due to the sensitive nature of the situation, was said to be both disappointed and contemplative. In decades of public life, she had navigated countless controversies, scandals, and shifting media landscapes. Yet this incident was different. It involved a member of the newer generation of the family, with a global profile and unprecedented celebrity status, operating in a media environment far more instantaneous and unforgiving than in her early reign. Advisors described her as weighing long-term implications. How would this affect the monarchy's image, the public's trust, and the internal cohesion of the family? Her responses were measured, reflecting both her experience and her awareness of the high stakes involved. Beyond the immediate family, the palace's broader staff ecosystem also felt the impact. Communications officers, press secretaries, and public relations strategists were suddenly operating under intense pressure. Analysts were assigned to monitor public reaction in real time, tracking social media sentiment, news coverage, and international commentary. Legal teams began evaluating whether any aspect of the photograph could intersect with ongoing or potential litigation. Even traditionally ceremonial staff, accustomed to protocol and decorum rather than crisis management, found themselves drawn into discussions about messaging strategy, public perception, and potential mitigation efforts. Whispers of tension within the royal household soon reached external observers. Journalists with long-standing connections to the palace reported subtle shifts in daily routines, private meetings behind closed doors, and an overall atmosphere of heightened vigilance. Courtiers were said to be more cautious in interactions, conscious that even minor statements could be leaked or interpreted as confirmation of internal discord. The palace's typical rhythm, built on decades of routine, had been disrupted. Every gesture, every meeting, and every internal discussion now carried the weight of potential public scrutiny. The photograph also sparked debates among advisors about the nature of truth and perception. Could a single image, frozen in time, fully capture the motivations, intentions, and emotions of a public figure? Was the public entitled to interpret it at face value, or should the palace attempt to shape the narrative to provide broader context? These philosophical questions had practical consequences, influencing how statements were drafted, how media interactions were planned, and how Meghan herself might be advised to respond publicly. The intersection of perception, strategy, and reality became a central concern in every decision moving forward. Additionally, the photograph forced the palace to confront the evolving nature of media relations. In an era of instant sharing, global news cycles, and social media amplification, images like this could not be contained. Traditional strategies of managed appearances, selective interviews, and controlled press releases were no longer sufficient. The family faced the challenge of adapting long-standing protocols to a modern media landscape, where one photograph could define public perception instantly and irreversibly. The urgency to develop new communication strategies became a priority, as the risk of further misinterpretation or escalation loomed large. Underlying all these considerations was the broader issue of trust and cohesion within the family. The photograph acted as a catalyst, highlighting potential fractures and prompting reflection on how members interact with one another and the public. Private conversations reportedly involved candid assessments of loyalty, strategy, and intention. Some senior advisors worried that unresolved tensions could escalate into larger conflicts, while others emphasized the importance of unity in navigating the storm. The palace had weathered scandals before, but the combination of global media attention, celebrity influence, and internal scrutiny created a uniquely complex scenario. In summary, the photograph did more than reveal a moment of interaction between Meghan Markle and paparazzi. It exposed underlying vulnerabilities within the royal family's public relations machinery, tested internal loyalty and trust, and forced the institution to confront the challenges of operating in a hyper-connected media world. The ripple effects of this single image extended through the family, staff, and advisors, touching every layer of the monarchy. Decisions made in response to this photograph would have consequences not just for Meghan, but for the broader perception of the royal family and its ability to navigate an era in which authenticity, strategy, and image are constantly in tension. The chapter closes with an understanding that the palace, a symbol of continuity and tradition, now faced an unprecedented test. The photograph had ignited a whirlwind of analysis, speculation, and strategic reconsideration. The stakes were high, and every action, silence, or response carried weight. In the coming days and weeks, the ripple effects would expand, influencing media narratives, public perception, and the internal dynamics of one of the most scrutinized families in the world. The release of the photograph showing Meghan Markle in discussion with paparazzi did not merely stir curiosity. It ignited a media firestorm of unprecedented intensity. Across the globe, outlets scrambled to interpret the image, each vying to frame the story in the most sensational, attention-grabbing way possible. Headlines screamed of deceit, manipulation, and scandal. Social media erupted, with millions of users dissecting the image down to the smallest detail: the tilt of Meghan's head, the curve of her lips, the positioning of her hands. Every angle, every nuance, was scrutinized, analyzed, and speculated upon, transforming what could have been a private encounter into a worldwide spectacle. Within hours of the image's circulation, tabloid journalists and royal correspondents were calling on palace sources, seeking confirmation, context, or rebuttal. The photograph became the centerpiece of news cycles from London to New York, Tokyo to Sydney. Pundits debated whether Meghan had orchestrated the interaction with paparazzi to manufacture sympathy or whether it was an innocent, candid moment misinterpreted by the public. Analysts dissected her behavior using every lens available: body language, past appearances, public statements, and even her fashion choices. The global fascination with the royal family's private lives magnified exponentially, fueled by the undeniable magnetism of the Duchess of Sussex and the controversy surrounding her every move. Social media, with its instantaneous reach and viral momentum, amplified the intensity of the story. Twitter users trended hashtags that ranged from critical to supportive, while Instagram and TikTok videos circulated, dissecting the photograph frame by frame. Memes and reaction videos multiplied, often highlighting perceived contradictions between Meghan's public condemnations of paparazzi harassment and her alleged private negotiations captured in the photo. Influencers weighed in, commentators dissected the ethics, and fans of the royal family expressed outrage or disbelief. The photograph, once private, had transformed into a symbol of perceived hypocrisy in the court of public opinion. Public reactions varied widely. For some, the image was confirmation of long-held suspicions that Meghan curated her media appearances strategically, manipulating situations to her advantage. Critics highlighted the contrast between her public persona, a royal figure under constant pressure from intrusive photographers, and the photograph that appeared to show her engaging cooperatively with those same photographers. Letters to editors, opinion columns, and late-night news commentary all questioned her authenticity, her motives, and her alignment with the traditional values expected of royalty. Yet not all reactions were condemning. Many observers argued that the photograph alone did not provide a full narrative and cautioned against jumping to conclusions based solely on a single image. Supporters emphasized the challenges Meghan faced as a modern royal navigating an intrusive media landscape. They pointed out that encounters with paparazzi were inevitable and that public perception was often shaped by selective images, edited moments, and media framing. Discussions emerged about the broader context, how media sensationalism can distort reality, the pressures on public figures, and the thin line between reporting and narrative construction. In the midst of this, some journalists attempted to trace the origin of the photograph. Investigative reporters dug into its provenance, exploring whether it had been leaked intentionally, captured inadvertently, or sold by a third party. Speculation ran rampant regarding who had access to the image and for what purpose. Could this be a deliberate leak to tarnish Meghan's reputation? Was it an opportunistic paparazzi capture? Or was it a candid moment that inadvertently exposed contradictions in her public narrative? Each possibility sparked further headlines, interviews, and op-eds, keeping the story alive in news cycles for days, then weeks. The media storm also prompted broader discussions about ethics and accountability in journalism. Some critics condemned outlets for exploiting personal moments and sensationalizing private interactions for clicks, likes, and viewer ratings. Others questioned Meghan herself, debating whether public figures, especially those in the royal family, bear responsibility for managing their image in an era of relentless media scrutiny. Newsrooms debated the balance between transparency and respect for privacy, a conversation that resonated far beyond the specific incident. The controversy reached political corridors as well. In the UK, parliamentarians and media regulators discussed the implications of such media coverage, reflecting on public trust, the role of tabloids, and the influence of social media in shaping perceptions. Legal experts were consulted regarding potential defamation, invasion of privacy, and the legal ramifications of publishing images of a royal figure without explicit consent. The photograph, initially a single frame frozen in time, had evolved into a focal point for national debate, touching upon law, ethics, and the evolving relationship between public figures and media institutions. As public outrage swelled, the narrative took on a distinctly polarized tone. Media outlets that had long supported Meghan highlighted the pressures she endured, the challenges of being under constant scrutiny, and the double standards often applied to women in positions of power. Meanwhile, critical voices framed the image as emblematic of manipulation and dishonesty, portraying the Duchess as someone willing to orchestrate her own victimhood for public sympathy. The contrast in narratives created a cultural tension, where public opinion was not merely divided, but fiercely mobilized. Fans and detractors alike used the photograph to bolster their interpretations, turning it into a battleground for competing stories. The intensity of the media storm had cascading effects on Meghan's immediate environment. Staff and advisors worked tirelessly to manage press interactions, schedule appearances strategically, and craft statements that could mitigate further backlash. Even mundane activities, from charity visits to personal outings, became susceptible to interpretation and potential controversy. The palace communications team, accustomed to orchestrating controlled media narratives, found itself in a reactive mode, responding not only to the photograph, but to the relentless speculation, commentary, and analysis it generated. In addition, The global public's fascination with the photograph underscored the enduring power of images in shaping narratives. A single snapshot, capturing a fleeting interaction, a smile, a gesture, could redefine public perception, spark debate, and provoke both admiration and condemnation. It illustrated how visual media, combined with modern digital amplification, has become a decisive force in influencing opinion, reputation, and cultural discourse. For Meghan Markle, this meant that every appearance, interaction, and gesture was now subject to hyperscrutiny, where intent could be questioned and authenticity constantly challenged. In conclusion, the photograph of Meghan Markle engaging with paparazzi ignited a media storm that transcended a simple snapshot. It became a symbol of broader tensions, the clash between public image and private reality, the pressures of modern royalty, the power of media framing, and the fragility of public trust. It tested the boundaries of ethics, loyalty, and perception, exposing vulnerabilities not just for Meghan, but for the institution she represented. The storm was relentless, dynamic, and global, demonstrating how a single image could catalyze complex cultural, ethical, and emotional conversations that would resonate far beyond the palace walls. Behind the public-facing response, internal deliberations within Meghan's team revealed a highly coordinated effort to anticipate long-term consequences. Advisors considered potential impacts on future engagements, partnerships, and public appearances, emphasizing the need to maintain credibility, control narratives, and preserve opportunities for influence. Strategic consultations included scenario planning, risk assessment, and media monitoring, ensuring that every statement, interview, and post aligned with broader objectives while mitigating reputational exposure. These meticulous preparations underscored the stakes of celebrity image management in a high-pressure, constantly surveilled environment. Furthermore, Meghan's response addressed broader societal conversations regarding media ethics, privacy, and the treatment of women in public life. By framing her engagement with paparazzi as part of the complex navigation of personal security, public expectations, and media intrusion, she sought to elevate the discussion beyond individual controversy. Her communications encouraged audiences to consider systemic pressures, questioning whether the expectations placed on public figures were reasonable or sustainable. This approach not only contextualized the photograph, but also reframed public dialogue around accountability, fairness, and the responsibilities of media organizations in reporting responsibly. The release of the photograph showing Meghan Markle smiling and negotiating with paparazzi sent shockwaves not only through the media, but deep within the walls of the royal family itself. Buckingham Palace, a space accustomed to carefully curated public appearances, suddenly found itself confronting an image that disrupted long-standing narratives about Meghan, her relationship with the press, and the careful balance the family maintained between privacy and public life. The photograph, seemingly innocuous at first glance, had the potential to destabilize reputations, reignite old tensions, and challenge the family's approach to media management. Within the palace, initial reactions ranged from disbelief to quiet concern. Senior advisors convened in emergency meetings, poring over the image, examining its provenance, and discussing potential responses. The question at the forefront of these discussions was simple yet complex. How could the royal family protect the institution's integrity while navigating the delicate optics surrounding Meghan? Council emphasized that any response had to be measured, strategic, and sensitive to the public's perception. Missteps could exacerbate criticism, provide fodder for tabloids, and threaten long-standing public trust in the monarchy. Queen Consort Camilla, Prince William, and other senior royals reportedly held private conversations analyzing the broader implications. According to palace insiders, the photograph sparked debates about Meghan's narrative, her interactions with the media, and the authenticity of her public persona. Some advisors argued for silence, letting Meghan manage the fallout independently, while others advocated for a subtle acknowledgement to reinforce the monarchy's transparency and credibility. The tension between intervention and observation highlighted the complex dynamics of the royal household, maintaining cohesion and respect internally while remaining responsive to external scrutiny. The royal family also considered the photograph's potential impact on public sentiment. Surveys conducted in the immediate aftermath revealed a divided audience. Loyal supporters of Meghan viewed the image as a minor misinterpretation, emphasizing her charitable work and family commitments as proof of her integrity. Conversely, critics seized upon the photograph as evidence of manipulation, questioning whether staged interactions with paparazzi undermined her claims of media harassment. These polarized reactions mirrored internal palace concerns. Any misstep could alienate segments of the public or provoke media narratives that emphasize discord within the monarchy. Prince Harry's response to the photograph was another critical factor in the palace's internal deliberations. Close aides report that he experienced a complex mix of loyalty, defensiveness, and strategic consideration. On one hand, he was determined to support Meghan and protect her reputation, emphasizing context and intent behind her interactions with photographers. On the other hand, he understood the potential implications for the family's collective image and the challenges posed by ongoing media scrutiny. Conversations between Harry and senior advisors focused on maintaining consistency in messaging, avoiding reactionary statements, and ensuring that public narratives did not spiral beyond control. The palace also examined historical precedents, reflecting on prior media controversies involving royal family members. From Princess Diana's fraught relationship with the press to earlier instances of photographed interactions being misinterpreted or sensationalized, advisors sought lessons from the past. These discussions underscored a recurring theme. The interplay between private actions and public perception could never be entirely controlled, but proactive, thoughtful strategies could mitigate reputational risk. Meghan's photograph became a case study in the delicate art of managing celebrity within a centuries-old institution. Legal considerations further complicated internal deliberations. The palace's legal team reviewed potential implications of the photograph, including privacy violations, copyright concerns, and defamation risks. They evaluated whether media outlets might misrepresent the image, and if so, how to respond without amplifying the controversy. These assessments were not merely reactive. They were strategic measures designed to preserve the monarchy's authority, credibility, and public trust while navigating the intricate relationship between individual family members and the media ecosystem. The media, aware of the palace's unease, intensified scrutiny. Tabloid and mainstream outlets alike explored the photograph's implications, with headlines emphasizing perceived contradictions between Meghan's public statements and private behavior. Royal commentators dissected facial expressions, gestures, and positioning, interpreting the image as either a pragmatic engagement or evidence of calculated orchestration. Each analysis, whether sympathetic or critical, exerted pressure on the family to consider both public messaging and internal alignment. The palace faced a dual challenge: managing internal dynamics while simultaneously influencing global public perception. Beyond media strategy, the photograph prompted reflection on interpersonal relationships within the royal family. Conversations reportedly touched on trust, communication, and the pressures of public life. Advisors recognized that even minor perceived discrepancies could exacerbate tensions among family members and complicate joint initiatives, public appearances, and charitable endeavors. Meghan's actions, intentionally or unintentionally, became a focal point for broader discussions about collaboration, mutual support, and the delicate balance between individual agency and collective responsibility within the monarchy. International reactions added another layer of complexity. Media outlets in North America, Europe, and Asia circulated the photograph widely, framing it within different cultural and political contexts. Audiences abroad interpreted the image according to local narratives about celebrity, privacy, and media ethics. Palace advisors considered these global dimensions, recognizing that the photograph's impact extended far beyond the United Kingdom. The monarchy's communication strategy had to accommodate diverse audiences, ensuring that messaging was consistent, culturally sensitive, and adaptable to various media landscapes. Finally, the royal family faced decisions about public acknowledgement. Should they comment, remain silent, or issue a subtle clarification? Advisors debated the merits of each approach, weighing the potential benefits against the risks of intensifying media scrutiny. Ultimately, the consensus leaned toward strategic discretion, allowing Meghan's team to lead the narrative while the palace monitored developments, prepared contingency plans, and maintained internal unity. This approach reflected a careful balancing act, respecting individual autonomy while safeguarding institutional reputation. As the photograph of Meghan Markle smiling and negotiating with paparazzi began circulating, the world's media landscape erupted into a frenzy. News outlets across continents scrambled to interpret the image, analyze the context, and speculate on the intentions behind what appeared to be a carefully orchestrated interaction. From London to Los Angeles, headlines ranged from incredulous to scandalous, each publication attempting to capture attention while grappling with the photograph's complex implications. The media storm that followed would not only test Meghan's public image, but also challenge the monarchy's long-standing relationship with the press. In the United Kingdom, tabloid newspapers led the charge. Front-page stories depicted Meghan as both a master manipulator and a victim of her own contradictions. Analysts dissected the photograph in exhaustive detail, focusing on body language, facial expressions, and environmental cues. Every smile, gesture, and interaction became a potential clue to Meghan's intentions, with some commentators framing the image as proof of strategic calculation, while others suggested it was a pragmatic effort to manage media relations in a high-pressure environment. The public, caught in the crossfire of these interpretations, was left grappling with conflicting narratives, uncertain whom to trust. Mainstream media outlets, including broadcast networks and digital platforms, took a different approach. Rather than sensationalizing, they sought context, interviewing experts in media psychology, public relations, and celebrity management. Social psychologists suggested that Meghan's smile and negotiation could be interpreted as a form of social signaling, a technique to diffuse tension or establish control during a staged interaction. Public relations consultants argued that the photograph revealed the mechanics behind orchestrated media moments, illustrating how celebrities often navigate the thin line between exposure and protection. These perspectives offered viewers a deeper understanding, though the underlying tension of deceit versus strategy continued to dominate the conversation. Across the Atlantic, American media outlets seized upon the photograph with fervor. Major cable networks ran segments dissecting Meghan's actions, often contrasting them with her public statements condemning media harassment. Pundits debated the ethical implications of orchestrating press moments, raising questions about authenticity, transparency, and credibility. Social media amplified these discussions, with millions sharing the image, commenting, and forming instant judgments. Hashtags began trending within hours, sparking debates among fans, critics, and casual observers alike. Each new share, each retweet, and each commentary further magnified the photograph's reach, making it impossible for any narrative to remain contained. In Europe, coverage highlighted the broader cultural implications of the photograph. Italian, French, and German outlets explored the intersection of celebrity, privacy, and media ethics. Commentary focused on the delicate balance public figures must maintain between managing their image and respecting journalistic integrity. European audiences, often more attuned to the subtleties of celebrity diplomacy, questioned whether Meghan's interaction reflected strategic media management or a deeper inclination toward image control. The photograph became a springboard for conversations about the role of paparazzi, the ethics of staged interactions, and the responsibility of public figures to maintain consistency between private and public behavior. The photograph also sparked intense debate among social media influencers and independent commentators. YouTube creators, podcasters, and bloggers analyzed the image frame by frame, offering theories ranging from simple pragmatism to intentional manipulation. Some argued that Meghan had engineered the very scenarios she later criticized, creating a paradox that undermined her credibility. Others defended her actions, suggesting that smiling or negotiating with paparazzi is a natural tactic to avoid confrontation, maintain personal safety, and protect the dignity of her family. These digital narratives, often more immediate and emotionally charged than traditional media coverage, shaped public perception in real time, creating a decentralized yet powerful wave of analysis. The global media storm did not remain limited to speculation alone. Investigative journalists dug deeper, seeking corroborating evidence, eyewitness accounts, and insider statements. Interviews with former palace staff, paparazzi veterans, and public relations experts shed light on the intricate dance between royals and the press. Reports suggested that Meghan, aware of the high stakes surrounding every public appearance, had engaged in subtle negotiations to ensure favorable framing or controlled outcomes. While these findings offered context, they also reinforced the idea that the photograph challenged the narrative of pure victimhood, suggesting that Meghan herself played an active role in shaping the media she would later critique. Amid this frenzy, public sentiment evolved rapidly. Fan communities defended Meghan, highlighting her charitable work, advocacy, and efforts to navigate an intensely scrutinized life. Critics, meanwhile, amplified the photograph as evidence of duplicity, framing her as someone who manipulated media narratives for personal gain. Polls conducted in the weeks following the release revealed a sharp polarization. While some saw her actions as a calculated necessity, others interpreted them as a breach of trust, further complicating the monarchy's already delicate media relations. The photograph, in essence, had become a mirror reflecting both admiration and skepticism, forcing observers to confront their assumptions about authenticity, power, and public perception. Traditional news analysis, combined with social media commentary, created a feedback loop. Stories about the photograph sparked online debate, which in turn influenced subsequent news coverage. Influential voices, royal experts, journalists, and celebrity analysts were drawn into the discussion, each contributing to a layered narrative that intertwined fact, interpretation, and speculation. This feedback loop amplified the photograph's significance, ensuring that it remained a central talking point for weeks. The global media storm became an ecosystem in itself, with each outlet, commentator, and social media user shaping the narrative in ways that could not be entirely controlled. The royal family, observing this unprecedented wave of scrutiny, faced ongoing challenges. Advisors monitored public reactions, analyzing trends, sentiment, and media framing. Internal communications emphasized consistency, urging family members to maintain composure while allowing Meghan and her team to manage personal statements. Strategic discussions also considered long-term implications. How would this photograph and the subsequent media storm influence future public appearances, media interactions, and philanthropic initiatives? The palace recognized that this was not merely a short-term controversy, but a defining moment in how the royal family navigated media narratives in the digital age. As the media storm intensified, ethical questions came to the forefront. Should celebrities be expected to maintain perfect alignment between private actions and public statements? Was it fair to scrutinize Meghan's interactions with paparazzi without acknowledging the high-pressure environment she operated in? Experts weighed in on these dilemmas, highlighting the complexities of celebrity culture, media ethics, and public expectation. The photograph, though singular in focus, served as a catalyst for broader reflection on authenticity, performance, and the human desire to craft one's image in a world where every gesture is magnified, dissected, and interpreted. The release of the photograph showing Meghan Markle smiling and negotiating with paparazzi triggered an unprecedented wave of public reaction. Across social media platforms, millions of users engaged with the image, expressing shock, disbelief, curiosity, and even humor. Twitter became the epicenter of instantaneous commentary, with trending hashtags dedicated to the photograph, while Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook amplified visual analysis, meme creation, and opinion sharing. The public's response was not monolithic. Instead, it splintered into multiple camps, each interpreting Meghan's actions through the lens of personal bias, cultural context, and emotional investment in her public persona. On Twitter, the immediate reaction was explosive. Users posted side-by-side comparisons of the new photograph with her previous harassment claims, sparking intense debate. Some argued that the image exposed a calculated attempt to manipulate media narratives, portraying Meghan as a master strategist who engineered her own press moments. Tweets questioning authenticity gained thousands of likes and retweets within minutes, creating a cascade of viral discussion. In contrast, another wave of users defended Meghan, emphasizing the dangers and pressures faced by someone constantly pursued by photographers. These defenders suggested that smiling and negotiating could be a practical strategy to de-escalate potentially threatening encounters, preserving safety while maintaining composure under scrutiny. Instagram served as a visual forum for dissecting the photograph. Influencers, photographers, and royal commentators uploaded close-up crops, annotated sequences, and side-by-side comparisons. The platform's emphasis on imagery allowed users to examine body language in detail. The tilt of Meghan's head, the positioning of her hands, and her facial expression all became subjects of intensive interpretation. Influencers with large followings provided commentary that blended entertainment with analysis, highlighting the photograph's emotional and strategic nuances while often framing it within the larger narrative of Meghan's struggles with media harassment. The visual-centric environment of Instagram turned the single image into a storytelling device, allowing audiences to construct narratives, speculate on intent, and engage with multiple layers of interpretation simultaneously. TikTok, with its short-form, highly shareable video format, played a pivotal role in amplifying public discourse. Creators produced reaction videos, reenactments, and satirical content that transformed the photograph into a cultural moment. Quick cuts, captions, and sound effects emphasized drama, humor, or skepticism, making the discussion accessible to a younger, more digitally native audience. In many cases, TikTok users contributed to the viral momentum by framing the photograph in exaggerated scenarios, creating a participatory dialogue where viewers were encouraged to comment, duet, and react. This interactive environment intensified public engagement, blurring the line between media coverage and audience participation and elevating the photograph from a single press moment to a shared cultural phenomenon. Facebook provided a more reflective space, where long-form commentary and discussion threads flourished. Users debated the ethical dimensions of Meghan's alleged negotiation with paparazzi, considering the balance between celebrity privacy, public accountability, and the mechanics of staged media moments. Groups dedicated to royal news became arenas of intense debate, with arguments ranging from outrage over perceived deception to empathy for the pressures of public life. The discussion on Facebook often included historical context, comparing Meghan's interactions with media to those of other royals and high-profile celebrities. These conversations underscored the complexity of public perception, revealing that individual interpretation is shaped by knowledge, bias, and emotional investment in broader narratives. Traditional media, observing the digital uproar, responded by amplifying the public discourse. News outlets reported on trending hashtags, viral posts, and social media analytics, framing the public reaction as a critical component of the story. Analysts highlighted the speed and intensity of online engagement, noting that public sentiment could now shape media narratives in real time, rather than simply reflecting them after publication. This shift demonstrated the power of social media as both a democratizing and polarizing force, giving ordinary users a platform to influence the conversation and challenge established media framing. Opinion polls conducted in the aftermath of the photograph's release revealed a sharply divided public. Supporters of Meghan viewed her actions as reasonable and pragmatic, citing the need for safety and strategic media management. Critics, however, interpreted the image as evidence of duplicity, suggesting that she manufactured situations for public sympathy while publicly condemning the media. These findings illustrated a broader societal tension surrounding celebrity behavior, authenticity, and the ethics of public persona management. The photograph acted as a litmus test for public sentiment, revealing both admiration and skepticism in nearly equal measure. Influencers and commentators also examined the psychological and sociological dimensions of the photograph. Experts in media studies highlighted the concept of performative visibility, arguing that Meghan's interaction with paparazzi exemplified how public figures navigate carefully curated personas. Psychologists suggested that her smile could function as a coping mechanism, a way to manage stress while signaling confidence and control. These expert interpretations added layers of depth to the public discourse, encouraging audiences to consider not just the optics of the photograph, but also the cognitive and emotional strategies at play. The uproar extended beyond social media and traditional news into international forums. Public discussions in Europe, North America, and Asia reflected cultural differences in perceptions of celebrity and privacy. In some countries, The emphasis was on ethical responsibility and consistency between statements and actions. In others, the focus was on the psychological pressures of constant public exposure. These international perspectives enriched the narrative, revealing the multifaceted ways in which a single image could resonate globally, transcending geographic boundaries to become a shared point of conversation and controversy. At the center of the social media storm were the reactions of Meghan's closest supporters and critics. Royal commentators, celebrities, and influencers weighed in, offering analysis, defense, or criticism. Some praised her media savvy, framing the photograph as evidence of resilience and intelligence in a high-pressure environment. Others condemned the image as evidence of deceit and manipulation, questioning the authenticity of her prior statements regarding media harassment. The interplay between these voices created a dynamic, often chaotic, narrative ecosystem where authority, influence, and public sentiment intersected. The digital uproar also highlighted the evolving relationship between public figures and online communities. The photograph became a case study in viral communication, showing how a single image can spark global conversation, inspire content creation, and shape public perception in ways that are immediate and far-reaching. Users were not merely passive consumers. They became active participants, co-authoring the narrative, questioning motivations, and interpreting intent. This participatory model underscored the democratizing potential of social media, while also revealing its capacity to amplify conflict, polarization, and emotional intensity. Amid the chaos, Meghan's team responded cautiously. Official statements emphasized the broader context, highlighting the pressures of public life and the need for safety and personal dignity. These responses, however measured, were often overshadowed by the velocity of online discussion, demonstrating the challenges of managing reputation in an era where content spreads instantly and public reaction is both immediate and unfiltered. The tension between strategic messaging and organic social media discourse became a defining feature of the unfolding narrative. As the photograph of Meghan Markle negotiating and smiling with paparazzi spread across global media outlets, the royal family faced an immediate and unprecedented crisis. Traditionally, the monarchy has relied on discretion, measured statements, and subtle messaging to handle public scrutiny, but the digital age has compressed response times to a matter of hours, leaving little room for careful deliberation. Advisors convened in rapid succession, evaluating not only the reputational implications for Meghan herself, but also the potential ripple effects across the institution of the monarchy, which prides itself on stability, propriety, and public trust. The first priority for palace communications was damage containment. Press secretaries and senior aides drafted statements emphasizing Meghan's ongoing efforts to navigate life under relentless public exposure while maintaining personal safety and dignity. These messages, crafted with meticulous care, avoided directly addressing the photograph itself, instead framing media interactions as part of the intense pressures faced by any high-profile royal. Language was deliberately empathetic and cautious, designed to acknowledge public interest without confirming interpretations of deceit or manipulation. However, in the era of viral social media, even carefully worded statements risked misinterpretation, and every phrase was scrutinized by journalists, commentators, and analysts worldwide. Within the palace, discussions extended beyond media management to broader questions of institutional credibility. Senior royals, including advisors to Prince William and King Charles, debated how best to present a united front while acknowledging the personal autonomy of Meghan and her husband. The photograph, they argued, was more than an isolated incident. It symbolized the ongoing tension between traditional royal expectations and modern celebrity culture. Some advisors argued for a firm, principled stance that emphasized transparency and accountability, while others advocated for strategic silence, believing that overreaction could magnify the controversy and inadvertently validate the public's curiosity. Legal teams were mobilized as well. Consideration was given to whether the photograph represented a breach of privacy, a potential mischaracterization of events, or an opportunity for narrative clarification. Lawyers assessed the contractual and ethical dimensions of interactions with paparazzi, historical precedents, and the broader legal framework governing media conduct and royal protection. Discussions considered not only potential litigation but also reputational risk, recognizing that any aggressive legal action could reinforce narratives of deception or manipulation, while inaction could be construed as tacit acknowledgement. The royal family's private meetings were intense, often spanning late nights and involving a mix of seasoned advisors, communications experts, and trusted confidants. Analysts in attendance noted the delicate balance required. The monarchy had to preserve its image of stability and impartiality while protecting the privacy and dignity of individual members. The stakes were high, as even minor missteps could dominate international headlines, undermine public trust, and fuel partisan commentary across social and traditional media channels. Each option for response carried potential benefits and risks, demanding precise calculation and careful foresight. Meanwhile, royal insiders leaked selective details to trusted journalists, offering context without full disclosure. Some narratives framed Meghan as misunderstood, emphasizing her efforts to maintain composure under relentless attention. Others highlighted her media savvy, suggesting that navigating paparazzi relationships was a skill developed from experience and necessity rather than manipulation. These controlled leaks served dual purposes. They provided plausible explanations to the public while also signaling to critics that the family was actively monitoring the situation, thereby discouraging speculative narratives from gaining undue traction. Within the palace, tension emerged between traditionalists and modernists. Traditionalists emphasized the importance of upholding royal protocol and maintaining distance from media theatrics, warning that the photograph could erode long-standing standards of decorum. Modernists, conversely, argued for contextual understanding, suggesting that Meghan's generation operates within a media landscape that blends celebrity exposure, strategic image management, and instantaneous global visibility. These internal debates reflected broader generational and philosophical differences within the monarchy, highlighting the complexity of integrating personal autonomy with institutional expectations. An additional layer of complexity came from considering the public's perception of authenticity. Royals have historically been judged by their ability to embody values such as humility, integrity, and composure. The photograph, by portraying Meghan smiling and engaging with paparazzi while previously condemning media harassment, challenged these norms. Advisors debated whether issuing clarifying statements would restore credibility or further inflame skepticism. The choice of whether to intervene publicly or allow the photograph to be digested in the context of Meghan's broader narrative became a central point of contention, reflecting the intricate interplay between media strategy and cultural expectations. Security teams also became involved in the discussion, analyzing how the photograph and its viral spread might affect Meghan's personal safety. In the past, royal exposure to paparazzi has sometimes escalated into dangerous encounters, and the photograph's publication raised concerns about potential attempts to recreate or exploit such moments. Protective measures were evaluated, including adjustments to public appearances, coordination with law enforcement, and potential changes in the way Meghan traveled and engaged with the media. These considerations demonstrated the tangible risks intertwined with reputation management, underscoring the real-world stakes of what might otherwise appear to be a purely symbolic controversy. Public relations experts were tasked with crafting a multi-layered strategy. They examined potential avenues to redirect public discourse, including emphasizing Meghan's charitable work, highlighting her philanthropic commitments, and showcasing moments of genuine vulnerability and empathy. The goal was to balance the narrative, shifting focus from controversy to humanizing aspects of her persona. Digital monitoring tools tracked sentiment analysis, engagement metrics, and trending topics, providing real-time feedback on the effectiveness of communication efforts. Every post, statement, and public appearance was calibrated to anticipate potential interpretation and maximize impact. The royal family also faced pressure from external stakeholders, including political figures, media executives, and international observers. Each stakeholder group had its own interests, perspectives, and expectations, adding layers of complexity to decision-making. Advisors had to weigh these external pressures against internal priorities, recognizing that any misalignment could exacerbate the situation. The photograph's global dissemination meant that responses could not be localized or delayed. International optics were as important as domestic messaging, further complicating the family strategy. Ultimately, the royal family opted for a combination of measured public statements, strategic silence, and internal consultation. The approach sought to mitigate controversy without drawing further attention to the photograph, emphasizing dignity, discretion, and personal agency. Officials underscored that Meghan's interactions with media were private matters, subtly shifting the conversation toward broader themes of privacy, respect, and the pressures of modern celebrity. The response reflected an understanding of both the historical context of royal exposure and the evolving dynamics of digital media, where a single image can instantly shape global narratives. The publication of the photograph depicting Meghan Markle smiling and engaging with paparazzi ignited a firestorm that reverberated across media outlets, social platforms, and public discourse worldwide. In the days following, commentators, journalists, and royal observers dissected every element of the image: the angle of the smile, the body language, the subtle cues of negotiation, and the broader context of her prior statements condemning intrusive media attention. For the public, this single photograph became a prism through which Meghan's persona, credibility, and intentions were scrutinized with unprecedented intensity, reshaping narratives that had been carefully cultivated over years. Immediately, social media erupted. Hashtags trending in multiple countries highlighted the perceived discrepancy between Meghan's public condemnation of paparazzi behavior and the private interactions captured in the photograph. The online community split into factions. Some defended her, arguing that strategic engagement with media was a necessary skill in the modern world. Others seized upon the image as proof of calculated deceit. Memes, video breakdowns, and expert analyses circulated rapidly, further amplifying the controversy and creating a self-reinforcing cycle of attention that traditional public relations strategies struggled to contain. Within the palace, advisors continued to monitor the situation closely. While previous chapters outlined crisis management, by this stage, attention shifted to long-term reputation and legacy planning. Discussions focused on the potential implications for Meghan's ongoing role in public life, charitable engagements, and broader influence within and beyond the royal family. The photograph, advisors realized, was not merely a snapshot of a single moment. It had the power to shape perceptions permanently, influencing how future generations might view her actions, authenticity, and alignment with royal values. Meghan herself responded privately to the mounting attention. Sources close to her reported a mixture of frustration, disappointment, and resolve. The frustration stemmed from the seemingly unfair judgment by a global audience for what supporters described as routine media navigation, an inevitable reality of her public position. The disappointment arose from the perceived betrayal by those who had leaked the photograph or interpreted it without full context. Yet, there was also a determination to continue her charitable work, maintain her public engagements, and assert control over her narrative, signaling that the photograph, while impactful, would not define her entirety.